Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about the possibility of trading for Lamar Jackson, as some believe the Falcons might be the number one trade destination for him. We'll unpack that rumor for you. Also, we got the latest buzz on the next DC in Atlanta replacing Dean Pease, and we're going to wrap up the show with signing this Pro Bowler in free agency. It's offseason for all but 9 teams right now, so all that coming your way right now. Welcome into Falcons Today by Chat Sports. I am your host, Matthew Peterson, and we've got a lot of ground to cover on today's show. We're going to talk about some NFL trade buzz, some free agency, and then in-house things for the Falcons as they are looking for their next defensive coordinator. But let's start with probably the most sexiest segment of today's show, and that is the idea of trading for Lamar Jackson. Personally, I think Lamar's future in Baltimore is murky at best. If you polled Ravens fans today compared to, say 6 months ago about their confidence of Lamar returning next season, I don't think the results are the same. Now, some believe that if a move were to happen, it would be a tag and trade, right? Put the franchise tag on him, and then Lamar and his mom, because he doesn't have a contract, agree to a contract with a team, say like the Falcons, and they pull off a trade. That way the Ravens don't let Lamar just walk in free agency. Now, could the Falcons be in the mix for Lamar Jackson? Let's break this down because we got a couple things to uncover on this story right now. Let's start with this, coming from Paul Andrew Esden, who is a beat reporter for the Jets, and he tweeted out, insert eyes emoji, execs around the NFL strongly expect the Ravens to tag and trade quarterback Lamar Jackson this offseason, per Jason LaConfora. If that's true, Connor Hughes, whoever that is, said that the Jets would be in line for those sweepstakes, in the front of the line for the sweepstakes of Lamar Jackson. Okay, we don't care about the Jets side of things. What I do care about is what Benjamin Albright, who is really well tapped into the NFL and kind of knows the buzz on all the trade talk. And here's what Benjamin Albright replied to this tweet when someone asked him about the Falcons' standings in the Lamar Jackson sweepstakes. And he said, it's true. I expect Atlanta to be at the front of the line, though. So it's true that we might see a tag and trade for Lamar Jackson, at least according to Albright. But are the Jets at number one, or is it the Falcons? So I don't think it's much of a conversation, at least from my point of view, when you want to compare Lamar Jackson and Desmond Ridder. I mean, one, when you just look at their career stats, it's criminally unfair, right, to compare these two. Desmond Ridder has only played in 4 games. But I just want to take 30 seconds to remind you of Lamar Jackson's stats. And yeah, the last 2 years have not provided us with phenomenal Lamar Jackson moments. He has been injured down the stretch the last 2 seasons. But we're talking about Lamar Jackson here, right? And so what I'm saying is, what are we even talking about here? Why are we comparing Lamar Jackson and Desmond Ridder? This is a no-brainer, I think at least. So here's my trade idea. You're welcome to disagree with me in the comment section. What if the Falcons got Lamar Jackson and you toss in a 5th because just looking at the Watson and the Wilson trade, there's always some late day 3 pick that goes back for who knows what reason. But the Ravens receive a 1st this year, a 1st next year, and a future 2nd along with Desmond Ridder. So Russell Wilson went for 2 firsts. Deshaun Watson went for 3 firsts. What about some kind of middle ground, okay? 2 firsts, a 2nd, and Desmond Ridder as sort of a starter pack to jumpstart their QB search of replacing Lamar Jackson here. We'll talk more about this trade in just a moment, but we are trying to reach 9,000 subscribers here on the channel, and I'm going to need 252 of you who have not subscribed to please go ahead and do so. Help yourself by getting the best Falcons offseason coverage right here at Falcons Today by Chat Sports. I'm just going to regurgitate what I said a moment ago. This is a no-brainer. I am sorry, Desmond Ridder, but you don't stick with a 3rd rounder because you think you might see something in 4 games when he didn't throw a touchdown through the first 3 weeks of them and pass up on Lamar Jackson. I mean, this is fast forward 3 years in the rebuilding process and get an all-star, a Pro Bowl, an MVP quarterback entering the prime of his career. I think Passing up on Lamar Jackson because you want to wait and see if Desmond Ridder could be something is foolish. I'm not sold on Desmond Ridder over Lamar Jackson. Desmond Ridder might be a decent quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think this is a quarterback that is worth waiting for. So, in my opinion, you definitely go out and you get Desmond Ridder if you could. But I want to know what you have to say. What would you do if you were Terry Fontenot and this trade idea came across your desk? Would you pull the trigger on it? T for trade or P for pass? Let me know in the comment section below if you would do this trade. Lamar Jackson for 2 firsts, a second, and Desmond Ridder. Middle portion of today's show, we're going to devote to the defensive coordinator search as the Falcons have put out requests to interview Brian Flores, Al Holcomb from the Panthers, Jerry Gray from the Packers, and Ryan Nielsen. They also requested to interview Ejiro Evero, the Broncos DC, but that got declined. Now, there's one name that kind of jumps out, and that's Brian Flores. Right? Why? Because you recognize that name. He had a lot of success in Miami on the defensive side, and it appears that one of Atlanta's own, Cordarrelle Patterson, would love to see Brian Flores in Atlanta next season, right? Cordarrelle Patterson, C-P84, tweeting out, Brian Flores to the Falcons would be lit. And I agree. Brian Flores to Atlanta would make a whole lot of sense for a defense that's got some really nice young pieces, sort of like what Miami had going on back in 2019. Now, we'll talk more about Brian Flores in just a moment, but today's show was made possible by BetUS. When you go to chatsports.com/betfalcons and you use promo code Falcons125, BetUS is going to give you a 125% deposit bonus. You got a good feeling how the wild card or the divisional round is going to shake up. Make all of your picks. I've got the Niners and the Bills going to the Super Bowl. Let me know what you got and make sure all your picks are made when you use this link, chatsports.com/betfalcons and promo code Falcons125. So going back to Brian Flores, like I said, look at the turnaround. I mean, the Dolphins defense went from 30th in yards allowed in 2019, halving that all the way to 15th in 2021. Just 3 seasons, and he cut the weight in half. But what about points allowed? Because there's a lot of good ways to measure a defense. 2019, dead last. By the time he leaves, once again, halving it. In 2020, he had them top 10. Rushing yards, too, because the Falcons definitely could use some help beefing up that run defense. Went from 27th to 14th. The stats speak for themselves. Brian Flores is a very, very good defensive coach, and I'd be hard-pressed to find anyone in Atlanta right now that thinks Brian Flores would not be a good coordinator for Atlanta. Now, who do you want the next DC to be? I think Brian Flores should be a no-brainer for almost all 32 NFL teams, with the exception of a couple that love their DC, like Raheem Morris in LA. But outside of that, I think Brian Flores is an upgrade for probably a majority of defensive coordinators out in the league here. Now, to wrap up the show, I want to talk about Jessie Bates. So, Falcons are going to be, I think, noisy in free agency this year. They're going to be loud. They can make some noise. Why? Because they got $56.3 million to spare. That's the second most in the NFL, only behind the Chicago Bears, who, by the way, are double that. They are over $100 million. So does Jessie Bates to the Falcons make some sense? I don't know if anyone's waking up right now thinking the Falcons' biggest need is a safety, but I do think this secondary, if it were to be Grant, Bates, A.J. Terrell, Hayward, that's a pretty scary secondary. And you kind of look around the NFL right now, and it's not, look around the NFC South, and it's not made of world beaters at quarterbacks, especially if you see Tom Brady leave the division. Just kind of going off the top of my head here, Panthers, I don't know what they're going to do, but I don't think they're going to bring in a great quarterback. Then I move on to the Saints, similar boat as Carolina. They're going to run it back with Jameis, Andy Dalton, I don't know. If both teams look to kind of reset a little bit, and the Bucs coincidentally also lose Brady, you look around the NFC South and you see a division with no top-tier quarterback, and it might be a defense that takes over and wins the NFC South last year. It didn't take a lot to win the NFC South this year. So they're looking for a defense. Well, Jessie Bates would be a nice addition to the secondary and would fill it out quite nicely, right? You're going to have a secondary that's going to be very hard to go against and against quarterbacks that aren't that top tier anyway. So now I turn my attention to, well, are the Falcons going to spend money in free agency? Is that something that Atlanta sees in the cards for them? So Terry Fontenot, the GM for Atlanta, was talking about what they want to do this upcoming free agency period because he's been at the driver's seat for a little bit now, and he's kind of moved on to phase 2. Here's what he said. We're in the next phase of the plan. So we had a plan from the very beginning, and now we're in the next phase of that. This is going to be a different offseason than we had previous years. We're still going to be smart, and we're still going to handle things right. We're still going to set parameters and have discipline with everything we do. And yet it's going to be different than it was. Jessie Bates, the last 4 seasons, has been an all-pro, Pro Bowl talent. Look what he's done. The numbers speak for themselves. 2020, 15 pass breakups. This year, 2022, 4 interceptions, a forced fumble. Jessie Bates would be a very good addition to this Atlanta secondary. Why? Well, the safety room, in my opinion, isn't set in stone. At least going off Pro Football Focus's ranks, look where Jessie Bates stacks up against the current starting safety duo in Atlanta. He's 15th out of a nice 69. Richie Grant is 50. You can work with 50. Jalen Hawkins, he's 67. You see what I'm getting at here? I think you could improve on from Jalen Hawkins. Jessie Bates and Richie Grant, A.J. Terrell, that could be a pretty good 3-headed monster in the secondary here. So if I had to come up with a rough idea of what a Jessie Bates contract could look like, what about this? What about a 4-year, $60 million deal? He's probably looking for more. I'm not quite sure if he's going to get it. You're not really seeing a ton of safeties get the bag lately. An average of $15 million, you guarantee over half of it. I think it's a pretty good deal right there. The Bengals are some broke boys. They don't like spending money. In fact, they're still shaking in their boots about the idea of having to pay Joe Burrow $1 billion because he's going to ask for that, and he should get it. But we'll end the show with this question. Would you sign Jessie Bates? Type S for sign or type P for pass. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below.